Today, we're going to be talking about navigating brand sponsorships during this global pandemic. Things are changing, my friends, and they are changing fast. Now, I'm happy to be joined today by two accomplished personal finance creators, Kelan Kline from The Savvy Couple and Rich Jones from Paychecks and Balances. Now, they're here to share their brand sponsorship experience as of late and discuss how we can still thrive in our personal finance businesses. Welcome to the show, Rich and Kelan.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, Rich, let's start out with you. Let's talk about what type of sponsorship work you were doing before all this craziness happened. How are you making money through sponsorships?
Yeah, most of our sponsorship work has been through the podcast. So mid-rolls, as some folks may be familiar with, where you listen to the episode 20, 30 minutes in, you hear a sponsor or two, or for some folks, three. So that's been the primary way that we've been monetizing, and then also mentioning those sponsors on our newsletter and on social media as well as part of the package.
Got it. And then, Kelan, how about you? How have you been making money through sponsorships? How have your partnerships been working in the past?
Yeah, so similar, we're kind of in that micro influencer stage, and we're kind of using our blog as a place to kind of promote other brands and companies that align with our business and our avatar. And we do blog posts, we do social media amplification, we've done Facebook ads, we've done email marketing. So just a bunch of ways to get a company to go in front of our audience and just have a nice relationship that way.
Yeah, it makes sense. Partnering with like-minded brands and then bringing them close to your audience. That makes a lot of sense. So, Rich, what's changed now? You've been doing this sponsorship through your podcast. What's changed with regard to your relationship with your sponsors and any maybe revenue impact that's happened?
Yeah, the biggest thing, and I did want to say we do have a company, a middleman company, or actually a middlewoman company that represents us and helps us get sponsors on board. So I'm not going out there and sending emails every day to bring new companies into the mix. But one thing I have noticed, and I got a note last week where upcoming sponsors were asking for a 50% discount essentially on ads, which I actually took the route of saying, hey, I understand, but that's not going to work. I'd rather not have the revenue right now than take a 50% cut, just given that I also have a day job and thinking about my time invested in doing this. And I have started to see updated talking points. And at first I did have to reach out about that and say, hey, I can't do this happy-go-lucky ad in the midst of a pandemic. So what are the updated talking points? And it did feel like a couple of the companies lagged behind a little bit in terms of getting those in. But fortunately, we're in a place now where all of the companies that we're working with have actually provided updated points that speak to this situation specifically, which has been kind of nice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the discount thing, that's something to personally think about. Is that something you want to do, or is your time better spent with other money-making opportunities, like you're saying, with your day job? That makes a lot of sense. So, Kelan, how about you? How have you been affected by the changes with the sponsorship opportunities you've had in the past?
Yeah, so we've definitely seen a big decline on companies that want to work with other brands and just a decline with the ones that we've worked with in the past. I think that everyone is in that stage where it's like a lot of uncertainty happening right now, and they don't have the budget to kind of use that influencer marketing with us and other companies, other blogs and creators. So we've kind of made sure that we continue the relationship that we have with the people we've worked with in the past. I think everyone is trying to set themselves up, especially in our niche, the personal finance niche, to kind of ride that wave after this all passes, to really be that beacon, that leadership, that role, to kind of be in the place where you can really help serve the audience. So I think a lot of brands are doing the same thing. So it's important that we've been doing is kind of continuing those relationships, really thinking outside the box on who we should be reaching out to in a couple months from now, and just setting ourselves up for that. But we've definitely seen a decline in sponsorships opportunities recently.
Yeah. Rich, you made a good point on maybe having some proactive conversations, or at least partnering on talking points. So if you are doing sponsorship work right now and you want to make sure that your tone is of the times, what advice would you have for content creators to maybe make that proactive conversation happen with their either middleman or middlewoman companies or their sponsorship clients?
Yeah, I think two things that are really important is one, understanding your values. I talk about this in all types of context. And then also audience first. That's one of our key things for the podcast is if it doesn't serve the audience, we don't do it. And there have been opportunities that have come our way, and there's a lot of predatory stuff that's happening right now. I think we're even seeing it within our space where it's, hey, there's this great deal, sign up for this, sign up for that. And it's important to take a step back and say, okay, what do people really need right now? Because we want to make sure that the companies that we're working with are actually serving a need. And that was a bit of a struggle where I was like, how do I promote this service that's a fairly high ticket item during a time where people are struggling? And I'm trying to talk around it a bit, so I'm not saying too much. But then once I actually had a conversation with the middle company about it, and they made some points that were very valid in terms of, well, people are at home, so this is an additional opportunity. And then that was able to get me to say, you know what, this would be helpful for people, and there are folks that can actually take advantage of this. And I think we have to be careful about assuming that everyone does not have money to invest in themselves or invest in things that they need right now. I've seen a lot of folks saying, oh, I can't do this, I can't ask people to do anything right now, but there are people who have the means. And so once I kind of considered that, and I realized that we were still in alignment with this particular company that I'm talking about here on values, it was easier to kind of have that conversation and go forward and promote it and feel good about it because, again, it was ultimately serving the audience, even if a smaller portion at the end of the day.
I think that's a really good point to bring up, Rich, because I think as content creators, and especially people in personal finance, a lot of us are doing this to help. We want to help people. We want to help them get to the next level. So the last thing we want to do is feel like we're being predatory during this time when people are in need. But to your point, if we have a service that is helpful or a partner that is helpful, that was truly helpful right now in the situation, it makes a lot of sense to keep that going. So, Kelan, I would love to hear your opinion on that, too. How are you riding that line of still making money in your business, but also providing a service that's helpful?
Right. I think that's a really fine line. It's a balance that you have to do right now. And it's really focusing on, like Rich said, the audience and making sure that you are partnering with brands and companies that you know are helpful and valuable to the audience and they solve your audience's problems. So I think if you are, whether it's this time or in the future, if it's a product that you've been using in the past or in the future, and it's valuable for your audience, I think that you can continue to promote it. And like Rich said, people do have the means. There are people that are set up to invest in themselves right now. So just kind of going with that mindset and making sure that you're always putting the reader first is big.
One thing I would throw in, I was working on our email newsletter, and we did remind listeners. I wrote a few lines like, hey, it's a really tough time right now. There's a lot of predatory stuff happening. Everything that we're promoting right now has been vetted. We've used it. There are people that we know personally. There are companies that we were talking to before this pandemic. So it might also be a good time to even remind your audience that, hey, I know things are tough and crazy right now. These are folks that are vetted. These are things that I use. Just ensure that they keep that faith in you in terms of what and why you're promoting what you are.
I think that's a great point, Rich, too, because there's lots of information that's coming out, and people are spending a lot of time on social media right now. So you know that there's lots of things flying at them, whether it's true or not, or you want to be able to trust your source. So if you've had an audience member for a long time, this is your opportunity to shine and let them know that, hey, I'm still that trusted voice that you can look to, especially during these tough times. Let's talk about pivoting. So, Rich, you mentioned hey, if I'm going to lose a little bit of revenue from podcast advertising, I'm just going to pivot to focus on my day job and make sure that everything is rock solid there. Are there any other ways you're trying to pivot to, I guess, keep the business flowing, or is this a period of time where you're like, hey, I'm okay with this, change in revenue for now, and then eventually we'll catch back up? How are you handling that?
Yeah, I think the day job puts me in a situation where there's not a whole lot of pressure, and I am fortunate in my current situation to not have to worry about making ends meet or if I'm going to be laid off or anything like that. But I think one pivot has been actually on the affiliates side of things, where I actually took some affiliates out of our newsletter, even though that they represent a revenue source for us. But I noticed some of the things that they were saying and doing online that didn't really, so that predatory stuff that I was talking about earlier, and kind of the, yo, you got to get in on these stocks. Now is the time. I'm jumping on this webinar. Okay, y'all, time to buy my $5,000 course. That stuff had to go. So, so we'll end up taking a bit of a hit there, but the sponsorships are still consistent, and there are so many positive folks who are doing great things in the personal finance community that it was simple enough to pop out one or two that we didn't necessarily believe in anymore and insert one or two that we know from the FinCon community to replace that. So it's to be determined in terms of what we're going to see as far as the loss goes, but I think that's been the biggest thing. And then with the sponsors providing updated talking points, we're in a pretty good spot and we're pretty consistent. But yeah, again, I'd probably be saying a lot of different things if it wasn't for the day gig. So
yeah, I hear you, man. Well, it's good to have a balance, and as a personal finance creator, I'm sure that's part of your overall financial plan is making sure you're protected. So smart moves there. Kelan, how about you? Are you pivoting at all, knowing that a lot of sponsorship revenue is a big part of your plan originally? So I mean, how are you pivoting? How are you guys planning maybe to diversify your income now or in the future?
Sure. So we actually have a very different background than Rich. We are both doing this full time, so we're impacted much more greatly on the coronavirus. So yeah, we've definitely seen a dip. Last year we did close to 50% of our revenue was from sponsorships, which is a ton. So we still have sponsors that come in. We still have sponsors that we've been working with for months on end. So we're definitely continuing those, but we're really focusing on providing as much value for our readers right now, growing our email list, growing our following, and knowing that in a couple months, they're really going to need our help on certain products that we have, such as budgeting binder, debt binder, and just affiliates that we're affiliated with, and focusing on growing our email list, really focusing on creating content that's SEO driven and just focusing on other things that are not just sponsorships. So just staying diverse, basically.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Kelan, there's somebody listening right now, and they are heavily relying on sponsorship income too. Any steps that they should be taking maybe to shore things up or connect in different ways that you've been thinking about?
Yeah, so the first thing that we personally did, because like I said, we rely heavily on sponsorship, is we looked at our expenses, our monthly expenses for our business, and said, okay, what tools can we cut out? What freelancers can we kind of not use anymore? Just what are ways that we can cut back expenses to kind of get through this uncertain time? And then it's, again, just focusing on that list, our email list, continuing to grow that, making sure that we're continuing the relationship, because I think that's really huge, is continuing the relationship with sponsors that we've worked with in the past, because we found it's just like a customer. It takes 10 times more money to get a new customer than keep the one you have. So we found that if you can maintain a relationship with a sponsor, with the person that's the head of the marketing department, you can really, really grow that to something really beautiful. So just making sure we're continuing that relationship with them, and just getting creative, possibly writing up some proposals right now to send out in a couple months, reaching out and saying, I know you probably don't have a budget now, but in a couple months, we're thinking about writing this type of article or this type of content. Would you be interested in sponsoring that type of stuff?
Yeah, and knowing that this is going to pass, knowing that this
Right,
isn't
exactly.
our future forever. This is
Exactly.
a period of time, and we're going to get through it. I appreciate you sharing that, Kelan. Thank you. And Rich, there's somebody who's a podcaster that's been relying on sponsorship revenue for maybe more than just their day job. What advice maybe would you have for them to kind of get through these tough times?
I really love the point that he made on keeping the relationships with the sponsors you do have, even if they're slowing things down. Still check in with them. I've even seen the idea out there of finding creative ways to partner specifically on COVID-related content that may not necessarily even be selling the product per se, but hey, here's a message or here's a PSA. So I've seen people throwing ideas around like that. Also, and this is going to vary depending on what your home situation is like. This is also a time to for a lot of folks to be able to create additional content or create content that could become revenue generating in the future. So for self, I've started working on creating a course. Even though I was just talking about courses, my course is actually helpful. I promise you.
For $5,000, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, and it won't be $2,000. So I think it's a great time to take a step back, look at your business, see how you have been doing, figure out new ways that you can create content that might generate revenue. Because that's the thing with sponsors. A sponsor leaves, that revenue source is now gone. So it's a good time to figure out other ways that you might be able to monetize. So maybe that's affiliates. If you don't have a sponsor running on your podcast, is there an affiliate that you can read, that you can push people to, that'll replace some of that revenue as folks sign up, or whatever the model is for that particular company? So those are probably the biggest things. And we do have a spot for, if we don't have a sponsor, here's the affiliate that we will insert into that episode. So while we don't get paid automatically like we would with a sponsor, it's at least an opportunity to share something with our audience that we do believe in, and that if folks do use it, we will then receive revenue as a result.
I love it. I love it. Thank you guys so much for taking time to talk with us today about this very timely topic, and it's something a lot of us are dealing with in the FinCon community. So, Rich, where is the best place for people to find you and listen to your awesome podcast?
Yes, so you can find me all around the web, Twitter, the gram at I am Rich Jones, and you can find the podcast at paychecksandbalances.com. We also have a blog there, and you can find the podcast across social media at Pay Balances, because, you know, we want people paying off that debt.
That's right, buddy. In a Plutus Award-winning blog, that is, everybody. Kelan, where is the best place for people to connect with you and learn more about what's going on at The Savvy Couple?
Yeah, so me and my wife are at thesavvycouple.com, and Savvy is SAVVY. Everyone always forgets the second V there. And then on all social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, The Savvy Couple.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much. You are two guys that I admire with the work you're doing, and I really wanted to invite you on just because this is a really important conversation to have, and we're gonna get through this. I know we are, and thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Andy.
Thank you.